You know what's worse than being lied to? It's that moment when you realize everyone else knew the truth except you. When the tricycle driver gives you that look, not pity, not judgment, just recognition. Like you're part of some club you never wanted to join. I thought I was special. I thought I was her first Western boyfriend, her ticket to a better life. Turns out I was just Tuesday. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from tonight. A subscriber from Ohio reached out after watching our channel for months. He wanted to share his story anonymously, hoping others might learn from his mistakes. I stepped off that plane in Cebu City with my retirement savings burning a hole in my pocket and dreams bigger than my common sense. 58 years old, recently divorced and tired of Toledo winters that seem to freeze my bones deeper each year. The Philippines was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance at authentic love with a woman who'd appreciate a decent man. I'd read the forums, watched the videos, heard the success stories. What could go wrong? The coffee shop where I met Christina was one of those hip places near Ayala Center, full of young professionals and the smell of fresh pastries. She was sitting alone reading a book in English, wearing a simple yellow sundress that made her look like sunshine itself. When our eyes met, she smiled. Not the practiced smile I'd seen on dating profiles, but something shy and genuine that made my heart skip. "Excuse me," I said, walking over with all the confidence my YouTube research had given me. "I'm Frank. I'm new here, and I was wondering if you could recommend something good." She looked up at me with those dark eyes, and I swear I saw her hands tremble a little. I am Christina. You are American?" Her English was broken but sweet, like she was testing each word before letting it out. "From Ohio," I said, sitting down across from her. "And you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." She blushed so hard I thought she might faint. "Oh no, sir, I am—" "How you say? Simple girl only." That's when she told me the words that hooked me completely. "You are my first foreign boyfriend. I never talked to Kano before." My heart had beating so fast, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Here was this gorgeous young woman, 26 years old, telling me I was her first. Not just her first foreigner, her first everything that mattered. She seemed nervous when I offered to buy her coffee, like she couldn't believe this was happening to her. "My friends, they will not believe," she whispered, accepting my offer with a smile that could have powered the whole city. "American man want to know me?" We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her simple life, her family in the provinces, her job at a call center. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed gold digger. Just a sweet girl who worked hard and dreamed of something better. When I walked her to the jeepney stop, she let me hold her hand for exactly 30 seconds before pulling away, embarrassed. "I see you tomorrow?" she asked, and the hope in her voice made me feel like a teenager again. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," I said, and meant every word. That night in my hotel room, I called my buddy Mike back in Toledo. "You're not going to believe this," I told him. "I think I found her. The one." "Easy there, Romeo," Mike laughed. "You've been there one day." But I knew. I absolutely knew. Christina was everything those other women back home weren't. Genuine, grateful. Unspoiled by American feminism and entitlement. She needed me, and God, it felt good to be needed again. The next few weeks felt like living in a movie. Christina introduced me to her world slowly, carefully, like she was sharing precious secrets. She took me to local markets where old women sold fruits I'd never heard of, taught me to eat with my hands at family-style restaurants, showed me hidden beaches where locals went to escape the tourist crowds. "Frank, you try this," she'd say, feeding me pieces of mango with her fingers, laughing when juice ran down my chin. "In Philippines, we share food like family." She was teaching me Tagalog phrases, giggling when I butchered the pronunciation. "Mahal kita," she'd whisper, her hand over her heart. "It mean I love you in my language." I started sending pictures back to my friends in Ohio. Me and Christina at the temple, at the night market, sharing Halo Halo at a roadside stand. Every photo showed the same thing, this incredible girl looking at me like I'd hung the moon. "You living the dream, brother," my friend Dave texted back. "She looks crazy about you," and she did. Christina would light up when she saw me, like I was the best part of her day. She'd grab my arm when we walked, not possessive but protective, like she couldn't believe I was really hers. But even then, small things started nagging at me. When we went to bars, she always knew exactly where the restrooms were, which drinks were good, how much to tip the bartender. My cousin worked here before, she'd explain, or my friend tell me about this place. Always a reasonable explanation that made me feel silly for wondering. At SM Mall, the security guard greeted her by name. "Oh, he remembered me from last month," she said quickly. "I come here with my sister sometime." The Western guys we'd run into would nod at her sometimes, and she'd give them polite smiles back. "Just being friendly," she told me. "Filipinos are hospitable people." I pushed the doubts down. This was paranoid thinking, the kind of jealous bullshit that had helped ruin my marriage back home. Christina was different, special, mine. One afternoon, we were taking a tricycle to Robinson's Mall when I caught the driver staring at me in his rearview mirror. Not just glancing, really studying me, like he was trying to figure something out. When we stopped at a red light, Christina got out to buy water from a street vendor. The driver turned around and looked at me with these sad, knowing eyes. "She nice girl," he said in broken English, shaking his head slowly. "But, sir—" He trailed off when Christina came back, handing me a cold bottle of water and settling in beside me like nothing had happened. But that look stayed with me. What was he trying to tell me? That evening at dinner, our waiter greeted Christina like an old friend. "Kumusta, Christina? Long time no see." She seemed flustered, answering in rapid Tagalog before switching back to English. He work here long time. He see many customers." But his smile was too familiar, too warm for someone who just remembered a random customer. Why had she answered in Tagalog when we'd been speaking English all day? These moments kept happening. A bartender who knew her drink order. A hotel clerk who waved at her through the window. A taxi driver who started chatting with her in Tagalog before realizing I was there. "You're very popular," I joked one night. "Philippines is small country," she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Everyone know everyone." I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. 3 weeks into our relationship, Christina came to me crying. Real tears, the kind that made her mascara run and her voice shake. "Frank, I have big problem. My mama, she very sick. Need operation for her heart. But we have no money." She showed me photos on her phone. A tiny woman in a hospital bed hooked up to tubes and machines. Medical documents in Tagalog that might as well have been hieroglyphics to me. Bills that added up to more than most Filipinos made in a year. "The doctor, he say if we not pay soon." She couldn't finish the sentence, just collapsed into my arms, sobbing. $3,000. That's what it would take to save her mother's life. $3,000. That meant nothing to me, but everything to her family. "Of course I'll help," I said, stroking her hair while she cried against my chest. "We'll transfer the money first thing tomorrow." The gratitude in her eyes when I said that. I'd never felt more like a hero in my entire life. She called me her guardian angel, her savior, whispered salamat over and over between kisses that tasted like tears and relief. At the Western Union office, she held my hand while we sent the money to her cousin in Manila. "My family, they will pray for you every day," she said. "You saved my mama's life." That weekend, she brought me to meet her extended family at her aunt's house in Lahug. 15 people crammed into a small concrete home, but they welcomed me like royalty. The men shook my hand and called me Kuya Frank. The women served me the biggest portions and made sure my beer never went empty. Her uncle Miguel pulled me aside during dinner. "You good man, Frank. Christina very lucky girl. We all very grateful for Mama's operation." This was what I'd come to the Philippines for. Not just a girlfriend, but a whole family who appreciated me. People who saw my worth beyond my bank account, who valued kindness and generosity over status and games. I started looking at condos for rent, places where Christina and I could build a life together. Nothing fancy, just a simple 2-bedroom where we could be happy. She got excited looking at the listings, pointing out which ones had good kitchens, which neighborhoods were safe for walking at night. "You really want me to live with you?" she asked like she couldn't believe it. "I want to marry you," I said, and watched her face light up like a Christmas tree. But the universe has a way of testing your happiness. 2 months in, we were at a sports bar in Lahug, watching a basketball game when I noticed them. 3 older Western guys at the bar who kept looking over at our table. Not at me, at Christina. When she went to the restroom, one of them approached. Tall guy with a British accent and a beer gut that spoke of too many San Miguel nights. "Excuse me, mate," he said. "Is that Christina you're with?" My guard went up immediately. "Yeah, why?" He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Just wondering." She gets around that one. "Watch your mouth," I said, standing up. "Easy, easy." He held up his hands. "No disrespect. Just saying we've all been there, haven't we?" Christina came back before I could ask what he meant, and the guy melted back to his table. But I caught him and his friends pointing at us, sharing some joke that made them all laugh. "Who was that?" she asked. "Nobody," I said. "Just some drunk asshole." But when we left, she seemed nervous, kept looking over her shoulder like she expected someone to follow us. The next week, another incident. We were at a beachside restaurant in Moalboal when an Australian guy stumbled over from the bar, drunk as a lord, swaying like a palm tree in a typhoon. "Frank!" he slurred like we were old friends. "How's it going with the missus?" I'd never seen this guy in my life. "Do I know you?" He laughed, pointing at Christina. "We all know Christina, don't we, love?" Her face went white. "I don't know this man, Frank. He is drunk. We should go." But the Australian was already walking away, chuckling to himself. "Good luck with that one, mate. You're gonna need it." In the jeepney home, I asked Christina about it. Her explanation came too fast, like she'd been rehearsing it. "Maybe he see me at mall sometime, or with my cousin. You know how it is. All foreigners think they know all Filipino girls. Maybe." But the doubt was growing. A little worm of suspicion that wiggled around in my brain every time she looked at her phone, every time someone greeted her a little too familiarly. The wedding was beautiful. Her cousin marrying some guy from Dumaguete, in a ceremony that mixed Catholic traditions with Filipino customs I didn't understand, but tried to respect. I wore my best barong, sweating through the tropical fabric while Christina looked stunning in a simple blue dress. But during the reception, something happened that I couldn't explain away. I was sitting at the family table, nursing my third San Miguel, and trying to follow conversations that kept switching between English and Tagalog. The aunties were laughing about something, and I kept hearing Christina's name mixed in with numbers. "Isa kadalawa tatlo," one of them was saying, counting on her fingers while looking at me. Then more laughter. My Tagalog was basic, but I knew numbers. 1, 2, 3. "Ano yun?" I asked, using one of the few phrases Christina had taught me. "What's that?" The table went quiet. Uncle Miguel jumped in quickly. "Were they just talking about how happy they are for Christina? You know, her first serious boyfriend." But the counting aunt was drunk on tuba and she kept going. "Apat, lima, anim, 4, 5, 6. Christina appeared behind me like magic, putting her hands on my shoulders. "Frank, you want to dance?" She pulled me away from the table before I could ask what the counting meant. But I saw the looks the aunties exchanged, the way Uncle Miguel shushed them in rapid Tagalog. On the dance floor, Christina pressed close against me. "You having fun, Mahal?" "Your aunt was counting something," I said. "Oh, that." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "She counting how many years until we get married. Filipino aunties, they love to plan weddings." It was a good explanation. It made sense. But it didn't explain why everyone had looked so uncomfortable when she started counting. The real break in my perfect fantasy came 3 months later, in the most mundane way possible. Christina had left her phone on my kitchen counter while she showered, and a Facebook notification popped up. Just a glimpse, but enough to see a message preview from someone named Klaus. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that even as I was picking up the phone. But that little worm of doubt had grown into something bigger, hungrier, and I needed to feed it or kill it once and for all. Her Facebook Messenger was a nightmare. Conversations with Hans, with Klaus, with David, with James, with men whose names I'd never heard, but whose messages read like copies of conversations I'd had with her. "I am simple girl looking for true love. You're so handsome, like movie star. My mama very sick, need operation." Screenshots. Western Union receipts. Hotel addresses. A carefully organized system of hope and heartbreak that made my blood run cold. But the worst part wasn't the evidence of other men. It was seeing my own conversations in that context, realizing that every sweet word she'd whispered to me had been copy-pasted to half a dozen other guys who thought they were special too. When she came out of the shower, I was holding her phone. "Frank, what are you doing?" "You want to explain this?" I held up the screen showing Klaus's message. Missing you, baby. Can't wait to see you next week. The tears came immediately. Real ones or such good fakes I couldn't tell the difference. Those are old messages. From before I met you. Frank, please, you have to believe me. There's a timestamp. This is from yesterday. He keeps messaging me, but I don't answer. Look, you see? I don't answer him. She grabbed the phone, scrolling frantically through conversations, showing me where she hadn't responded to recent messages. And she was right. Most of the recent messages were one-sided, guys trying to reach her while she didn't respond. I block them all when I meet you, she sobbed. But they keep making new accounts. They won't leave me alone. Frank, you have to trust me. I love only you. I wanted to believe her. The tears looked real. Her desperation felt genuine. And there was logic to her explanation. If she was still actively scamming these guys, wouldn't she be more careful with her phone? The money transfers, I said. The hotel receipts. From before. Frank, I was a different person before I met you. I was desperate. My family needed money. I made mistakes. But you changed everything. You saved me from that life. She was in my arms now, clinging to me like I was a life preserver. Please don't leave me, please. I will die without you. And I stayed. Because I wanted her story to be true more than I wanted to face reality. But reality has a way of insisting on itself. So a week later, I was doing laundry. A domestic task that felt so normal, so couple-like, that I was actually humming while I sorted clothes. In the pocket of her jeans, I found a receipt from the Grand Convention Center Hotel. The date was from 3 days ago when she'd told me she was visiting her sick aunt in Bohol. The hotel was 20 minutes from my apartment. When I confronted her, something changed in her eyes. The tears didn't come this time. Instead, she got angry. You checking my pockets now? Like I am criminal? You lied to me about where you were. I have right to privacy. Maybe I stay at hotel because my friend need place to stay. Maybe I help someone and don't want to bother you with problems. What friend? You don't know all my life, Frank. You think because you send money for my mama, you own me. That stung. The accusation hit a nerve I didn't know was exposed. I never said I owned you. Then why you act like it? Why you check my phone, check my pockets, ask questions like police? She was standing in my kitchen, hands on her hips, looking nothing like the shy girl I'd met in the coffee shop. This woman was confident, defiant, used to being questioned. You sound like all the other paranoid foreigners, she continued. Always thinking Filipino girls are lying, always suspicious. Maybe problem is not me. Maybe problem is you. Her words made me doubt myself. Was I being paranoid? Controlling? The kind of ugly American tourist who assumed the worst about local women. But the hotel receipt was still in my hand and the dates didn't lie. The truth finally hit me like a jeepney at full speed, and it happened in broad daylight on a Tuesday afternoon. Christina had told me she was going to Carbon Market to buy ingredients for dinner, a sweet domestic gesture that made me feel like we were building a real life together. An hour after she left, I realized I'd forgotten to give her money for the groceries. Being the thoughtful boyfriend, I decided to surprise her at the market, maybe take her to lunch afterward. But she wasn't at Carbon Market. After asking around, someone pointed me toward the Radisson Blu Resort, saying they'd seen her get into a taxi heading that direction. I found her at the hotel's beachside restaurant, but she wasn't alone. Third German guy, maybe in his 50s, was sitting across from her. And the way they were interacting, it was like watching a movie of my own relationship, played by different actors. He was leaning forward, hanging on her every word. She was doing that shy smile thing, the hand-over-mouth laugh, the way she'd touch his arm when she was making a point. Even from across the restaurant, I could see her working the same magic on him that she'd worked on me. I sat at the bar and watched them for an hour. Watched her tell him stories that made him laugh. Watched him show her photos on his phone, probably his house back in Germany, or his kids from his first marriage. Watched the way his face lit up when she spoke, like she was the most fascinating woman in the world. When he got up to use the bathroom, she checked her phone and typed rapidly. When he came back, she whispered something in his ear that made him grin like a teenager. They finished lunch and walked out together, his hand on the small of her back in the same possessive way I'd touched her 100 times. At the valet stand, he handed her an envelope, thick, white, business-sized. She tucked it into her purse without looking inside, like it was routine. Then she kissed him. Not a peck on the cheek, but a real kiss, the kind I thought she saved for me. I followed them to the parking area and watched her get into a taxi alone while he drove away in a rental car. Through the taxi's rear window, I could see her checking the contents of the envelope, counting what looked like cash. That tricycle driver's look suddenly made perfect sense. The knowing sadness, the unfinished warning. He'd seen this movie before, probably hundreds of times. The foreign guy who thought he was special. The local girl who made him feel that way. The inevitable moment when reality crashed the party. I wasn't her first foreigner. I wasn't even her only current foreigner. I was just Tuesday. The airport bar at Mactan was busy for a Wednesday evening, full of tourists heading home and business travelers starting their nights early. I told Christina to meet me there for dinner, wanting a public place for what I planned to be our final conversation, but when she walked in, she wasn't alone. The German guy from the restaurant was with her, his arm around her waist like he owned the world. They were both dressed nicely, like they were celebrating something special. I watched from my corner booth as they sat at a table across the room, close enough that I could hear pieces of their conversation when the ambient noise died down. "Never had a foreign boyfriend before," she was telling him, the same words she'd used on me 3 months earlier. "You're so innocent," he replied in accented English. "So pure, not like the women back home." I almost laughed. The guy was maybe 5 years younger than me, clearly recently divorced based on the pale band around his ring finger. He was living the same fantasy I'd been living, buying the same beautiful lie. She was doing the whole routine, the shy smiles, the broken English that wasn't quite as broken as it had been with me, the way she'd cover her mouth when she laughed like she couldn't believe he was paying attention to her. "My mama is very sick," she said right on cue. "Heart operation, very expensive here in Philippines." Here it comes, I thought. The hook, the sinker, the part where he gets to be the hero. "How much?" he asked, already reaching for his wallet. "Oh no, I cannot ask you for money. We just meet." "But the doctors, they say—" She let the sentence hang there, tears forming in her eyes with Academy Award timing. "Tell me how much," he insisted. When they got up to leave, I watched them walk past my table. Klaus, I'd finally put a face to the name from her phone, had his hand possessively on her back. Christina was looking up at him with those same adoring eyes she'd given me when I paid for her mother's surgery. After they disappeared into the airport crowd, I approached their server. "The couple that just left," I said. "The Filipino girl and the German guy." The bartender nodded. "Ah yes, Christina. She comes here maybe twice a week, always with different men. Nice girl, very friendly. Different men." He shrugged like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Tourists, you know. German guy, American guy, sometimes Australian. She very popular with the foreigners. You know her well? She good customer. Tips, well, never makes trouble. She just working, you know. Working, like it was a job. Which I realized it was. I went back to my condo and started adding up the evidence I'd been too blind to see. The hotel receipt wasn't an aberration. It was part of a system. I found more receipts in her things. Different hotels, different dates. A pattern of weekly meetings that coincided with her mysterious errands and family emergencies. Her phone, which I now had the password to, told the whole story. Screenshots of money transfers from Western Union, all from different senders. Hans from Sweden, Klaus from Germany, James from Australia, David from Canada, and Frank from Ohio. That was me, just another name in a carefully maintained spreadsheet of hope and heartbreak. The amounts varied, but the pattern was consistent. 3,000 for Mama's surgery, 500 for her cousin's wedding, 800 for her nephew's school fees. A never-ending cycle of family emergencies that coincidentally required exactly the amount each man could afford to send. The hotel had a weekly rate. The same room, the same routine, different lonely men who all thought they were saving her from something. I counted at least 6 different guys she was actively working. 6 men who woke up every morning, thinking about their sweet Filipino girlfriend, planning visits, sending money, building dreams around a woman who gave them 2 days a week and spent the other 5 days doing the same thing with other people. The math was simple and devastating. She was making more money in a month than most college graduates in the Philippines made in a year. We weren't boyfriends. We were customers. We weren't special. We were shift work. And I'd been so proud of myself for finding authentic love in a country where everyone warned me to be careful. The final confrontation happened at her apartment, a nice place in La Hague that I now realized I'd probably helped pay for. She came home from what she'd told me was a job interview, but I'd followed her to the Shangri-La where she'd spent 3 hours with an Australian guy who looked like he'd just discovered fire. "We need to talk," I said when she walked in. She saw something in my face that made her put her purse down carefully. "Frank, what's wrong? How many of us are there? What you mean? How many foreigners are you dating right now?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. For a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Not guilt, not shame, but calculation. Like she was running numbers in her head, figuring out which story would work best. Then she smiled, the same sweet smile that had hooked me in the coffee shop. "Frank, you are being silly. You know you are only one for me. Klaus doesn't think so. Neither does James or David or Hans." Her smile faded. "So you've been checking my phone again. I've been following you. I saw you with the German guy at the airport bar. I watched you tell him the same story you told me about your mother's surgery." She sat down on her couch, suddenly looking very tired. "Okay, so now you know. No tears this time. No desperate explanations or pleading for forgiveness. Just a woman who'd been caught at her job and was too tired to keep pretending." "How many?" I asked again. "Right now. 5 you make 6. The honesty was more shocking than the number. "How long have you been doing this?" 2 years. "Maybe 3. The shy act, the broken English, the first foreigner story. It works," she said simply. "You all want to feel special. You all want to save someone. I give you what you want. The family emergencies, some real, some not. Mama really was sick, but surgery cost $800, not $3,000. But you also generous when you think you are hero." I sat down across from her, trying to process the complete demolition of everything I'd believed about our relationship. So none of it was real? She looked at me like I was a child asking why the sky was blue. "Frank, you come to Philippines looking for a young, beautiful girl who will love you for who you are, not your money. But you 58 years old, divorced. Not handsome, not rich compared to other foreigners. Back in America, what kind of woman you get?" The question stung because it was fair. "That's not—" "You want fantasy," she continued. "You want to believe that sweet Filipino girl, fall in love with kind American man and live happily ever after. So I give you that fantasy. You pay for fantasy. But the money I sent, you think $3,000 is a lot? You spend that on your truck payment back home. But here it changed my family's life. My little sister, she go to college now because of money from you and the others. My mama, she have real surgery, real medicine. We buy small house, not rent anymore." She wasn't apologizing. She was explaining, like a businesswoman laying out her profit model. "You all come here thinking you are saving poor Filipino girl, but really you are buying experience. Rich experience. You pay for beautiful girlfriend, for family who welcomes you, for feeling like generous man, like hero. Everyone gets what they want. But the lies, what lies? I am beautiful, yes? I cook for you, sleep with you, introduce you to family. I laugh at your jokes, listen to your stories about America. I give you good girlfriend experience. You get what you pay for." I wanted to be angry, but her logic was bulletproof. I had gotten what I paid for. She'd never actually promised exclusivity. I'd just assumed it. She'd never said she loved me for who I was beyond my generosity. I'd interpreted her gratitude as love. "The other guys," I said, "do they know about each other?" "Some suspect. Most don't want to know. Easier to believe fantasy. And when we find out?" She shrugged. "Some get angry, make threats, call me names, some cry. Some try to save me from this life." She looked directly at me. "Some just leave quiet like smart men. Which one am I?" "I hope you are smart man, Frank." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside I could hear the sounds of Cebu City coming alive for the night. Jeepneys honking, vendors calling their wares, the distant sound of karaoke from a nearby bar. "Do you ever feel guilty?" I asked. "You feel guilty when you eat chicken? When you buy cheap clothes made by poor workers? This is survival, Frank. This is how smart women take care of family when system gives her no other choice." She was right, and I hated that she was right. I'd come to the Philippines with my retirement money, looking for a young, beautiful woman who would be grateful for my attention. She'd provided exactly that service. The fact that other men were getting the same service Didn't make my experience any less real in the moment. What happens now? I asked. Now you decide. You can stay angry, try to get revenge, tell other foreigners about me. Or you can understand that this is just business, and we both got something we needed. And if I choose to understand, then maybe sometimes I send you message, let you know how I am doing. Not asking for money, just keeping in touch. Like old friends. The idea was both depressing and oddly comforting. 2 days later, the same tricycle driver who'd tried to warn me 3 months earlier helped me load my luggage for the trip to the airport. This time his look wasn't sad or knowing, it was almost fraternal. You going home, sir? He asked in his careful English. Yeah, time to go. He nodded like he'd heard this conversation 1,000 times. Philippines good for vacation. But home is home, yes? As we drove through the streets I'd grown to love, past the restaurants where Christina and I had shared meals, and the malls where we'd walked hand in hand, he caught my eye in the rearview mirror. My brother, he also fall in love with tourist girl. Same like you. He very sad when he find out about other boyfriends. What did he do? He go home. Find nice Filipino woman in America. Marry her instead. Now he have 2 children, very happy. Does he ever regret coming here? The driver considered this as we pulled up to the airport. He say Philippines teach him important lesson. He learned difference between love and loneliness. Now he know what real love look like. I tipped him well, grateful for the wisdom wrapped in broken English. 6 months later, I'm back in Toledo, working part-time at Home Depot and living in the same apartment I'd planned to give up forever. The Philippines feels like a dream now. Or maybe a movie I watched late one night when I couldn't sleep. My Facebook Messenger gets regular notifications from guys planning their own Filipino adventures. Word has gotten around somehow that I'd lived there, and they want advice about visas, neighborhoods, where to meet good girls. I want to warn them, but I know they won't listen. I wouldn't have. Just be careful, I tell them. It's not like the YouTube videos make it seem. But you had a girlfriend there, right? They ask. It can work out? Sure, I say. It can work out, because it did work out in a way. Not the fairy tale I'd planned, but something more honest. I got 3 months of feeling desired, needed, special. Christina got money for her family, and the American boyfriend who treated her well. The only victim was my fantasy, and maybe that needed to die anyway. Sometimes I get messages from Christina, photos of her family's new house, her sister's graduation, updates on her mother's health. She never asks for money, just shares her life like she promised. In the photos, she looks genuinely happy, surrounded by family members whose education and medical care I helped provide. In her last message, she sent a photo of herself with a young Filipino guy, someone her own age with kind eyes and a genuine smile. My real boyfriend, she wrote. We're getting married next year. Thank you for helping me save money for our future. It should have stung, but it didn't. Instead, I felt something like pride. My money had helped her build a real life, not just survive. The fantasy I'd bought had been temporary, but its effects were permanent. Last week, a guy at Home Depot was telling me about his retirement plans. Thinking about the Philippines, he said. I hear you can live like a king there on Social Security. It's beautiful, I told him. Just remember, you're a tourist, not a local. Act accordingly.